Hey there, friend. It's Tracy. Are you someone who likes to travel? Are you somebody that loves to get out and explore and do things? Are you someone who dreamed of having a dog that could travel with you and now you have your dog? You know, the dog that you're like, I can't take this dog anywhere. What's going to happen with this dog? Have you been worried about what to do with your dog, how your dog will react? Are you someone that are like, I guess I'm just never ever leaving the house again? Are you that person? If you are and you're dreaming about days of traveling, either with your dog or being able to leave your dog to travel, this episode is for you. We're talking all about should I stay or should I go? Making the best travel decisions for your dog. That's what we're talking about today on the podcast. Let's get into it. Ready to have a calm and peaceful life with your dog without the stress of those fear-based behaviors? Hi, I'm Tracy, and I've been there, overwhelmed by all the conflicting dog training advice and unsure of what to do next. But now I help dog lovers like you simplify your life with your dog by building confidence naturally, fostering trust, and addressing those fear-based challenges. So, if you're ready, stop chopping those chicken wieners and let's get to it. Hello, 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 my dog loving friend. It's Tracy. I know. I have to use that. I don't use those buttons very often. I got to find a way to use them more often. All right, it's Tracy. Welcome to the podcast. I am so glad that you are here today. Hey, guess what? Guess what? It's March. We've made it. We've done it. We've gotten through January and February, and now we are here. It's March. March brings the idea of spring, right? Daylight savings time happens in March. First day of spring happens in March. And of course, poop pickup happens in March. Oh my gosh, so much poop. Am I right? Oh, anyone else dreading that part of March? Me? Hands up. Yes, I am. Anyway, if you're like me, and perhaps you are, maybe you have kids still in school. So March also means March break. Yeah, March break. I'm just using that one enough. I know. And as somebody who used to run a dog boarding and daycare, for us, March break just meant we were really, really busy. My poor kids never got to go anywhere. I promise it's not embarrassing. But I just realized I never used them. Oh, anyway. Yeah, my poor kids. They never got to go anywhere because they were always working in the kennel because we were always full. But it did get me to thinking about travel and what that means to people. And as someone who worked in the industry of boarding, I know the worry that people have when it comes to travel, both whether or not you're taking your dog with you or you have to leave your dog behind. There is always a worry about what is the right decision, what's the best thing for my dog for travel. Should I stay or should I go? I know lots of people that have to turn their lives around just to take a weekend away. And so I want to talk a little bit about that because while we want to have a life of inclusion with our dog, sometimes it's not the best choice for the dog. And so I thought I would kind of break down not only should I stay or should I go, but should your dog stay or should your dog go? We're going to talk about that, what would be the best choice there. And then I'm also going to give you some tips and tricks about what to do to make it easier for your dog after you've made the choice. Because what it comes down to is that travel and trust need to go hand in hand, right? We need to figure out where you are on your trust journey with your dog. Now, if you are a student of the Fearless Framework, you know that I talk all about the 3 steps of building trust with your dog. The very first step being that the dog learns to trust you. right? Step number 2 is the dog learns to trust the situations that you put them in. And then the final step is the dog learns to trust themselves. And that's the ultimate goal. Now, although it's 3 steps and they sound very, very simple, this is not a quick fix. Obviously, this takes time and it's fluid, right? Sometimes we think we're in step 2 and we're doing our testing and we're trying to figure it out. And all of a sudden something happens and we're, oh, nope, not quite ready yet. We have to go back to step 1, right? It kind of flows back and forth as you're building life experiences with your dog. So depending on where you are, should actually help you dictate whether or not taking your dog with you or leaving your dog behind is a better option. So if you are still working on step number 1, and that is the dog learns to trust you, that's where we're looking for the dog starting to still have the, oh my God, I'm going to die moment. But instead of having the freak out, they're looking to you and they're saying, I'm freaking out. Am I okay? Are you okay? What's going on? And they are comforted by you saying, it's fine. I got this, right? That's still phase 1 or step 1 of building trust with your dog. And if you're still in that stage, if your relationship is either still very new, or let's say your dog has had a traumatic experience and now you've taken a big step back trying to build trust and gain trust again, I would say it's probably not a good time to take your dog with you on a vacation. It would be too much. You're not at the point yet where the dog's going to learn to trust the situations that you put them in. So it's probably best to leave them, I would say, at home, right? Where they at least have the comfort and the predictability of their environment. They have their stuff, their routine. And if possible, bringing in somebody that the dog trusts or at least knows to keep all of the patterns of predictability alive for this dog. You know, we want to make sure that we keep it as normal as possible, reducing the variables as much as possible. So that would probably be the best option, right? The next option, if you're still in that phase, believe it or not, people are going to find this shocking for me to say, but if you have a dog that likes other dogs, let's say you have a dog that's really just fearful of people and new things, but they love other dogs. This a perfect example, and I've told this story before, is my dog Levi. He was terrified of people, didn't want anyone touching him or coming anywhere near him, but he loved other dogs. And so a great option for him when his foster mom had to go away was to actually come to my place, because he could basically exist and live a dog's life with very little intervention from me, right? We didn't go out of our way to try to make him feel comfortable around me and all this stuff. We just let him play with other dogs. He loved it. And so for a lot of dogs, and this will probably be true for a lot of street dogs that have been taken off the streets, because they understand dogness. Dogness. They understand dog stuff, right? But they tend to be like okay with other dogs. They can handle being around other dogs. They just don't like the people factor. And if you can find the right boarding facility that understands canine conversations and understands the fearful dog mind and all of that stuff, then a boarding facility might actually be a better option, right? Than having a stranger come into the home and try to help them if people is their problem. Okay, so boarding is actually a pretty good option for fearful dogs. And there were, as I mentioned, there's a lot of cases of dogs that do okay in boarding kennels. They just don't do okay, one-on-one with a stranger. Okay. Now let's say that your dog is in step 2, right? And you're doing the dog starting to learn and trust the situations that you put them in. And this is a testing phase. So your dog is still learning how to handle new environments, but you're not looking for perfection here. I'm not looking for a dog that is like perfectly chill and calm everywhere, because first of all, that takes years. Honestly, that takes years. Think of all the variables that can happen to a dog that like might, might blow their trust right out of the water. So we're not looking for perfection here, but we are looking for them to turn to you. Same sort of thing. Are they turning to you? Do they have a fearful moment and then they turn to you like, oh my gosh, this is scary. And they are comforted by your presence. The fact that you can go, it's fine. I see that. I got you. Do they feel comforted by that? And if they do have a moment, how quickly do they recover? Is it just a brief, like, oh gosh, that scared me, and now they're like, okay, I'm cool, right? Can they shake it off and re-engage with you? If that's the case, then you might want to consider taking this dog with you on travel. You might want to consider it a nice way. And I'll be honest with you, I've heard plenty of stories where dogs were way better outside of their home. They did better on vacation because their go-to triggers, the dog that's around the corner or the neighboring dogs that are fence fighting with them or whatever, all of that stuff isn't there anymore, right? They've been removed from all the environmental triggers, and now they're actually feeling a little bit more confident. They're feeling a little bit more optimistic. They're not quite as inundated with like dogs will get preemptively nervous thinking about and knowing that there is going to be the usual suspects out on the walk. But when we remove them from that environment and we take them to a brand new environment, they actually might do okay. So your dog actually might surprise you and be like a lot more inquisitive and asking you questions and going on adventures with you, and they might enjoy it, right? But I want you to consider, and really do consider this, that if you're planning on taking a vacation and you're planning on taking it with your dog, I don't want you to think about it as being training time. I don't want you to be like, okay, we're going to use it to like socialize or to train or whatnot. I want you to think about it as this is going to be time that I get to spend with my dog, building my bond of trust, really life layering experiences. We're connecting with me. That's what I want you to focus on. When we think about training, I feel like it feels like it's a job, right? And we're constantly focused on the dog and how did the dog do? And we're not really enjoying ourselves. Remember my number one rule, that if you haven't heard my very first episode, the number one life lesson that I learned from a dog that has shaped how I live with my dogs now is fun. Okay? It has to be fun. And I find, especially when we're like trying to help dogs through fearful moments or unconfident dogs and all that stuff, and we start thinking about it like training, I think we're missing the point, right? We don't want to be training all the time. We want to be living with our dogs. Okay. So this is a great opportunity for you to life layer some experiences and build some trust and emotional resilience, all of that stuff, right? It's got to be fun. So don't think about it as training, okay? All right. So if your dog is traveling with you, you are going to still try to prep, okay? Let's still have some thought process here. Even though we're leaving, can we bring things that still provide comfort? This is where, if you have a crate and you've created your crate as a comfort zone, I highly recommend bringing your crate with you. It helps tremendously. It gives an anchor of comfort wherever you go, especially if it's their crate and their stuff, right? And you use the same thing, like we're still going to go in there at night or however you set up your crate, right? It really does help sort of bridge that. Like I'm comfort, but also there's some familiarity. That's why for when we did have boarding dogs, we did encourage people to bring their own crates. If you haven't heard, we did this in renovated horse facilities. So our suites for our dogs were horse stalls. They were huge. And we would quite often recommend that people bring comfort things for their dogs so that they had that sense of home, even though we didn't want it to be like home, and it wasn't like home, right? They went out on play groups and there were pools and pack walks and all sorts of stuff and playing with other dogs. It wasn't like home, But when you came in for rest, you had your blanket, you had your crate, right? That kind of thing. And you want to do that when you're traveling. When you're traveling as well, you want to make it as comfortable as possible and try to keep some routines, right? Once you get to your hotel or your destination, still go for your walks, do all the same things, utilize the same setups that you do. Anything that you can to kind of bring a little bit of comfort in is beneficial. All right, let's talk about, where am I now? Oh, let's talk about if you can't bring the dog. So the two different options that I brought up, that I talked about, was either bringing a dog sitter to your home. That would be, if you can't bring your dog, that would be the number one thing, because the comfort zone in your home and the predictability is all there. And the only variable is the person. If you can't do that and you have to take your dog to someone else's house, that's less than ideal, but same rules would apply. Make sure that your dog has their crate, their stuff, their bowl, all of this, like anything that you can do to make it less stressful for them. And if possible, if it's a situation where your dog is going to live with that person in their house, then at least having that person hanging out with your dog, taking them out for walks, feeding them a couple of times in your house, so they start to get the idea that this person can also feed me. This person can also walk me. It's still going to be a challenge. I'm not going to lie. That's going to be a harder situation for them, but we're starting to create some connection there with the dog. And then, of course, the other option, again, as I mentioned before, is a boarding facility. Now, a boarding facility, you want to do your research on these. You really do. I personally know, because I'm in the training world, I personally know tons of really amazing dog trainers that are running boarding and daycare. And I can honestly say, if you can find a facility that is run by a dog trainer, that is probably going to be your best option. And please, no shade on this, like a little bit of shade, I guess, maybe a little bit of shade, but there's so many, places opening up with people with good hearts, that are like, I love dogs and I've had dogs all my life. And so now I'm going to run a daycare. And I think back in the day, or not a daycare boarding, I think back in the day, back when dog boarding was literally like the dogs just had their own run with an indoor outdoor pen. And that's what dog boarding was. That was probably okay. But now with the whole, dog boarding facilities that allow dogs to play with one another, now that exists, I can honestly say it does sometimes scare me, some of the kennels and whatnot that are opening with people that don't necessarily or haven't done the study of canine behavior, in particular canine conversations and play styles and all of that stuff. I'm a vet tech. I have done, I don't even know how many hours of studying this, not to mention I worked at a daycare before I opened my daycare. Like, I worked at a boarding kennel. And so I had an opportunity to watch play groups and whatnot. It's a thing. Like, it's a thing. I sometimes actually would get a little bit offended when people would like come up to me and just kind of be like, oh, I'd love to have your job. That's so much fun. And I'm just like, it's also challenging. Like, it's also challenging. You are literally in charge of toothy predators playing together, and you don't know how they feel. Like, there's so many variables. So I would honestly say, if you're looking into boarding facilities, especially boarding facilities that do dog play and that sort of thing, I would be looking into like, what's do the staff have proper training? Have they taken, basic stuff? I don't know. I feel like I'm judging. I'm kind of judging a little bit. I just know, as someone who worked in it and did it, um, like we had dog fights. Like nothing horribly tragic. I think in all of my time of working there, we only had one, no, maybe two. Trying to think. Two dogs that had to have veterinary care after a dog fight. I think that was, yeah, just two. Two dogs. In many years of doing it. And to me, that was, I still like count my lucky stars, like I count my blessings that, we had really great dogs and all of that stuff. But my point is that it's not as easy as it looks, y'all. That's all I'm gonna say. It's not as easy as it looks. So I would want someone like with a training background that has, some experience with understanding canine body language and all of that good stuff. Because it's important. But the nice thing about that aside, so once you've done your homework and you're like, this is a really good place, what I would highly recommend is if they have a daycare option, take your dog to daycare. Do that before your trip. Get them acquainted with the place and the facility, and have the people that own it or the people that are running it tell you how your dog did. How did they feel about it? Were they overwhelmed? I can honestly say that was the biggest thing that we offered to people was if you were really worried about your dog, I'm like, bring your dog for daycare. They only have to stay the day. They get to go home with you. But I am completely honest. I will tell you if your dog is overwhelmed. I will tell you if this is not the right fit for you. And there were many dogs where I was like, this ain't it. Your dog's not going to like it. There's some dogs took a little bit longer to sort of ease into it, but it's important to sort of recognize that it's not for all dogs. Okay. So when you're looking for a sitter, I know actually I was just talking to a client who, uses the service Rover, and that's a service where you can find people to like help look after your dog and that sort of thing. You just want to do your due diligence and research on that and make sure that it's the right fit. Okay. You're looking for someone that knows some stuff. You know what I'm saying? I know I kind of went off on a tangent there. All right. The last sort of tip for travel with your dog is going to be, you, you. Oh, this also comes from my experience of working in a boarding kennel, and you got to manage your own stress, right? Like you have to manage your own stress. I remember, I could always tell on the phone when people called and they were really, really nervous. And I'm like, listen, I get it. It's a lot. I get it. Don't get me wrong. I understand. I understand the honor. Like I was honored when people trusted me to take care of their dogs. I took that very, very seriously, and I understood it, which is why I always said, come for daycare. And I used to say to people too, especially if they had never been, I'm like, if you want to come, you come for the tour, and not on the same day that you're dropping off the dog. And the reason for that is because the day that you're dropping off the dog, like one, you want to see the place before you're going to go. But the other thing too is the day that you're dropping off the dog, you're going to be a hot mess. And I never allowed hot mess people to take their dogs back. Like when they would come in, we would pre-fill out all the stuff. So I had all the information ahead of time. And I would say to them, here's what you're going to do. You're going to come into my building, into the office, and you're going to say, hey, Tracy, here's Bailey. You're going to hand me the leash. You're going to say, bye, Bailey. I'll see you in a week. And then you're going to turn around and walk out the door. Because the people that put on the show, the people that put on the like, oh my God, I'm going to miss you so much and be a good girl and make sure you listen and all of the stuff that would happen would freak the dogs out. They would freak them out. And I would be like, you just need to get out. Your energy is really setting a tone here. And believe it or not, shortly after we opened our doors and having a couple of people do that, we also stopped and we no longer allowed people to drop off their dogs for boarding in the afternoon. I was like, all dogs have to come in the morning, even if that means they get dropped off a day before, but they're coming in the morning. And the reason for that is because people would get the dogs all riled up before they left their house. Dogs can sense it, right? Like dogs know when something's up. They know when you're going on a trip, when you're packing your suitcase and you're acting all weird and you're trying to find your passport and all of that stuff. They pick up that you are like something's going down and you're nervous about leaving the dog. So that people would get their dogs all riled up even before they got in, even if they did the whole like drop the dog off quickly and left. I would find the dogs to be really, really anxious for the first little while. And so what would happen is when people did the nighttime drop off, the dogs didn't have the day to settle in, to go play and whatnot. They literally came in they would be there in time to have their dinner and have one more outing. And usually at nighttime, I wouldn't let all the dogs out in big play groups at nighttime because the dogs that were there all day were tired. So I was a lot more selective and we would put only a few dogs out at a time instead of the big play group. And so dogs that came in the afternoon, if their owners had dropped them off, they were kind of antsy. They had like higher levels of anxiety. So we changed some rules around and we were like, you can only drop them off in the morning. That way the dog has the entire day, because I'm the one that's sleeping there that has to listen to your dog howling and crying all night when they're all revved up because you couldn't get your you know what together to keep your emotions in check, right? So while I get the stress and the emotion around it, you have to do it for your dog. So if you're leaving, you have to make sure that your goodbye is just a goodbye, especially if you're leaving the house. Don't make it a big deal. You can't make it a big deal. Don't rev your dog up before you go and be all like, I'm going to miss you and I hope you do okay and blah, 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 blah. Like, don't do that. Just, you're good. You're fine. You're going to have a great time. And here's the thing, at least in my experience as someone who ran the boarding kennel, your dog did have a great time. Right? Like with me, your dog's having a great time. like I would send pictures, be like, your dog's not even thinking about you. Like, which sometimes hurt their hearts, but that's what you want. That's what you want. So that was a lot. Final tips. Okay. Takeaways. Okay. If your dog is still in step 1, the trusting you stage, you're going to prioritize stability and predictability. So travel might not be the best choice for your dog, and finding a sitter to come into your house might be a better choice. If your dog is in step 2 and trusting the situations that you put them in, you might have a dog that has a great time. They might be away from their OG triggers, so they might be a little bit more optimistic, and it might be great, but you're still going to do the work. Bring things that allow for your dog to have calm and predictability in the travel, and don't be all focused on like, oh my gosh, this dog's stressed out. Like, just try to have a good time. And if you need a sitter or a boarding facility, you want to introduce those things early. You want to get them accustomed to some things as much as possible before that happens. Remember, the situation is the dog has to trust you. So if you're not going to be there and you're not at the dog trusting the situation, then you're going to try to create as much predictability in that comfort zone that you've been working so hard to build with your dog. Okay? So if you're feeling unsure about how to prep for your dog for travel, or you need help deciding if they're ready, we can chat. Let's chat. Why don't you and I get on a call together? I have a Calm Confident Coaching call. It's at a great introductory price. You can book a call with me and we can talk about travel and all sorts of stuff, whatever you want to talk about. Or if you have other things you want to talk about, we can talk about that too. Calm Confident Coaching call. You're going to go to beyondobedience.ca/session. beyondobedience.ca/session. Book a Calm Confident Coaching call with moi. Hanging out, talking dogs, everything that I love to do. And let's make your holidays the best ever for both you and your dogs. There you go. All right. I hope that helps. Hey, if you appreciated this episode, enjoyed this episode, can you do me a favor and give me a 5-star written review on Apple? Because it helps push the podcast out to more and more people. And that's the ultimate goal. If you're not on Apple and you're on Spotify, make sure you give me a rating there. Leave a comment. Join us in the free Facebook group and comment over there. Get involved over there. We're going to be having some discussions and some talks and some Q&As, all sorts of fun stuff happening in the free Facebook group. And as always, get out there today, my friend, and be the person that your dog thinks you are. Because your dog thinks that you're amazing. And so do I. Have a fantastic day, and I will see you in the next episode. Oh, and one more thing. This podcast is meant for entertainment and education purposes only, and it's not meant to replace hands-on professional training. If you're really struggling with your dog, please reach out to a professional in your area. All right, I think that's it. Bye for now.